Okay, much better. He's always got to figure out
Hi.
quirks.
We
Hey!
got it. Yay.
All right, so we got you. All right, so I'm
Ah,
kind of giving a description. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
no, not at all. Go ahead.
Well, so I was just giving a description. So this is we're gonna start again with the interview with Salome. So I'd like to just share a little bit of information with all of you about her. Salome is actually
Oh,
a
it's that.
what?
Oh, it's Salome.
Salome. Thank you for correcting me.
Salome, yeah.
Hi, hi.
It
Yeah.
happens
So
to me almost all the time, don't worry.
I've been saying it wrong this time in my head. Like whenever you know when you read a book and you just say the name in your head. So I've been saying it
Yep,
wrong this time.
yep,
Salome.
yep.
Um, she is a Reiki Master Teacher, which is really awesome. My husband is actually a Reiki Master Teacher. I'm only Reiki level 2, so
Oh,
I am in your.
wonderful.
Um, she is also a holistic health coach, herbalist, and chef. She is mom to 3 boys. Her husband is active duty of Air Force. I'm actually was a military kid. My dad was in the Air Force, so I'm pretty.
Oh,
I'm
well,
knowledgeable about
thank
the Air
you.
Force. Yeah. And you're stationed in your hometown of Great Falls, Montana, which is one of my favorite states. So that's another thing I think is really awesome. One of my favorite locations was going to Glacier in Montana. You know, it's been 4 years now, but I had a great time in Montana. It's so beautiful. And
It
that's what the
is.
park looked like back behind you.
Ah, yay. Ah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah,
So
it's
okay, so what everyone's gonna
spectacular.
And so, yeah, it's gorgeous over there. So, what everyone's going to be learning: realize you're worthy of love and the best things in life. Letting go of guilt and how you spend your time and energy. Letting go of expectations that are getting in the way of your happiness and well-being. So, we have a lot of really great information. I know we wanted to focus on trauma, and I think that's going to be a great topic because I have a lot of people in my groups that are, that's a big issue is the trauma part. So, I'm really excited about that. But before we get started into anything else, tell us, how is it, what is it that you do exactly, and how did you get into it? What brought you into this line of work?
So I like to call myself a healing facilitator, because as you know, like I help people connect with spirit. They do the work. I just facilitate, and kind of act as a catalyst in a lot of things. I've been kind of into crystals and herbs and things for almost my whole life. Like I can remember being a kid and just always picking up rocks anywhere I went. I've always been really connected to nature. As I got older, I got interested into a culinary career. So I actually went to culinary school in Portland, Oregon, and I ended up staying there. I fell in love with Portland. It was wonderful. And while I was there, I ended up interning at a holistic healing center called Essential Elements, and I discovered herbs and their medicinal and healing properties, and sound healing. We discovered, well, I was experimenting with sound healing at that time, and it was just a very transformational part of my life. And I just felt so at home. I knew that that's like, I'm like, okay, this is what I feel like I need to be doing in life.
Mm-hmm.
So once I moved back to my hometown, I started to transition into health coaching, and I got attuned for Reiki, and Reiki has been a huge part of my life. It's actually been really helpful to, I'm sure, as you can attest to,
Yep.
healing past trauma. It brings up all that gunk from your past, and it kind of makes you face it. But it also really helps with that too. So I really just wanted to offer services that I can to people because I feel like this is the time that we need to be out and about and sharing these tools. So, yeah, so I do Reiki healing and I do holistic health coaching. And then I also have Salome's Apothecary, in which I make herbal and holistic products that focus on autoimmune disorders. I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis after I had my first child. So
Wow.
I suffered with, well, not suffered, but, well, yeah, sometimes it was suffering. But I did everything natural up until I got a diagnosis. And then even after my diagnosis, I tried medication for a short time, but I decided that it wasn't worth the side effects and risks for me. So I'm back to all natural, and it's a really big part of my life.
That's awesome. So, and that's great. You were able to help other people. And I agree. I think this is the time in our history where working together to get people to their best lives is really the way to go. I mean, the more that we can help people and get empowered, the better it is for everybody. I mean, this is such a time for change. And it's just so exciting to be a part of that.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I've been noticing so many more people just stepping into their power and breaking free of cycles in their life, and it's really, really great.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know why I just saw this. Montana has all those wonderful, like those pools, right? You have all those hot
The
hot
hot
springs.
springs, hot springs,
That's
yes.
healing, nature as well as all that.
You know
That's
what?
I didn't
Yeah,
get to
I
go.
have to. Yeah, it is, the hot springs are renowned for healing properties. The indigenous peoples in and around Montana would go there for healing. They knew of its properties. So, I having rheumatoid arthritis, I don't get out nearly as much as I want to. I've only
Mhm.
actually been to one or two hot springs in Montana, although I'm sure there's many, many, many. But there was a product that I tried. Based out of Helena, Montana, and they had analyzed the mineral content of one of the hot springs near there and packaged, like they took that formula and packaged it up. And so I bought some at my local health food store, and oh my, it was intense how much it changed in my body. Like that night that I soaked in that, I felt a huge relief, like deep down into my bones. Like I can't remember being not in that much pain in a really long time. It was really intense. And then it actually gave me hope because I knew at the root of what's going on with me is nutritional. So I'm like, oh, you know what? I can heal. I can do this.
Yeah.
It might take a really long time and it might be a lot of work, but like I can heal my body. It is possible. So it was, yeah, really fantastic. And that's really funny you bring up hot springs because I'll be at a festival in Lolo Hot Springs in September
Oh,
vending. So just a
really
little
cool.
pitch there.
Look, I downloaded the information and gave it back without even realizing.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Oh,
So
yeah.
talk about trauma. So what are some of the things that I know, so holistic health coach, it's a whole bunch of different things. So what are some of the experiences that you've had and what are some of the tools that you can share with our viewers about healing from trauma? Because that is key with codependency and toxic relationships and all the stuff that we discuss in our group.
Yes, absolutely. So I think, like almost every other person out there, I experienced some childhood traumas. I feel like I know a lot of people have experienced worse traumas than I have, so I don't want to make it seem like it was so terrible. But I also don't want to discredit my own experience. So I mean, yeah, I had a pretty traumatic and abusive childhood in a lot of different ways. And because of that, as I was growing into an adult, I had, bad relationships. I was with partners who were not good for me, and I just took their abuses too, like I'm sure many, many of us have gone down that road. Um, so, once I was married, actually, like in the stability of my marriage, I was able to like work through and deal with my emotions and work through it. And it was really, really nice to have that,
That's amazing
stability.
that you're able to attract a partner as someone because for a lot of people in my group and for myself as well, until I healed myself, I couldn't attract a healthy partner. I mean, it was just not happening. I kept attracting
Right.
this. It was like repeat and repeat the same thing over and over again. So the fact that you have a healthy partner is I commend you. That's amazing you were able to do that.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't want to make, I think he has his issues too, but he was not wounded in the same ways that I was wounded, and he is a very different person. He deals with things very differently than I do. So I think that we're helping each other. I hope we're helping each other. I know sometimes it's not, and we just kind of repeat those cycles within each other. But this is our 6th year of marriage, and so I feel like this year we're finally coming into a good place in our relationship. So I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's not been easy. I am grateful that he's been able to work with me and stick with me through it. And so it's really, but so yeah, don't give out hope. There are good men out there.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, there definitely are. And that's, and I think that was an important thing to say, is that everyone's got things that they need to work on, but realistically, you need to have a good partner to support you as you work on yourself. So I think that,
exactly.
that's great that you have that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I want to speak a minute about my women's circle actually, because as healthy and as good it was for me to be married and to be in the stable relationship that I'm in finally, having a very tight knit circle of women that I confide in and we support each other has actually been, I think, equally as important as my partnership. Like in times actually they've helped me through so much in my partnership. But and we help each other, we support each other, and that's what's so if you don't have a partner that you can trust, and hopefully you will find a community in which you can be a part of. And it seems like you are building that kind of community. So that's wonderful.
That
Yeah.
that to me is a cornerstone. That's one of the things that I share with my clients all the time, is that you've got to have that cornerstone of your tribe, your
Yes.
community of helping people that can help support you, because we're social beings. So we need the support of other people, and like you said, everyone's got a little something that they're working on. So if you have like a coach or a therapist, and you have even just two or three, or even just one person that you can contact and feel comfortable sharing your feelings with, and just support you, that's actually positive in your life, that's going to really help you along for those not so easy times.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so I kind of want to get into emotional processing. And I just want to talk a little bit about like how important the processing part of that sentence is. And I don't know if I'm preaching to the choir with you about emotional processing, but there's a difference between um, processing an emotion and holding on to it. And I think that many of us were not taught how to process emotion. I know I wasn't. I've actually, in the last 2 or 3 years, I've been learning a lot from Vito Mucci. He wrote a book called Coffee for Consciousness, and he's on Facebook and Patreon. And anyway, he does amazing work, and his ability with describing emotional processing and how to go about that has been really instrumental for me. Um, so a lot of how I've overcome my traumas, like both in my childhood and I actually had a house fire last year. So
Oh wow.
that was pretty traumatic too, and it was yeah. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. But a large part of how I've gotten to in a good place in my life over through my traumas is allowing myself to really feel into them. And that's like really hard and terrifying. Um, and a lot of the times I would just like lock myself alone in my room and just cry and scream and get it all out. And I feel like I was like gonna die. And reliving it is hard. But once that you feel it, your body doesn't have to hold on to it anymore. Your soul doesn't have to hold on to it anymore. Once you're allowing yourself to process it, and especially like if you've ever experienced disassociation, or if you were a child and you disassociated, you need to give yourself that space as an adult, and otherwise you're not gonna it's gonna you're gonna keep carrying it, and it's not gonna help you um, to get to a better place. You've got to be able to let it go. So a large part of that is, like I said, feeling into it and really letting it be felt and honoring it, and then recognizing it for what it is. Take a step back and like recognize it. And I feel like it's, for me, what I do is I come into a feeling of appreciation for it. Sometimes that doesn't come up easy, and this sometimes this takes more than one time to go through this process for the same thing,
Mhm.
and that's okay. Um, so yeah, coming into appreciation for what it's given to you, the resilient for me, I feel like I gained a lot of resilience. I gained a lot of compassion and understanding for other people's issues and things that they might be going through in their life.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, and yeah, so I guess that's, and then letting it go, which is a different thing. And that's a little hard too, because it means rewiring your brain and like sometimes cutting off parts of your personality. And that's really, really hard. And I feel like often you need to be able to step outside of your life in order to do that. So hiring some sort of facilitator to do that is, I think, really helpful. Yeah.
And
Okay.
and I 100% agree with you, because that's what it is. When for me growing up, same thing. I didn't know what love felt like. I didn't know what was possible. Any of those things. I had a lot of anxiety. I didn't realize that I even was holding on to. And having someone else kind of say, hey, what you're feeling is normal. This is not so good. You want to work on this. What's happening to you with this other person is not healthy. Those are the kind of things I needed someone to point out, because as much as it didn't feel good, I was kind of used to it. It's like, oh, life is just kind of like this, and I just have to deal with it. So, learning, having that person on your team and having that person to say, hey, that's not, let's not do that. let's change your focus. And, it's not necessarily changing your personality, but it's changing the way you think. It's actually like someone saying, hey, let's stop that thought process there, and let's look at it from a different perspective. And I think that's really important to realize as you're going through. It's uncomfortable as you're learning to process new information. So to have that other person to say, hey, you're doing it right, or this is what we need to work on, I think is so important.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what would you mind share, like, what are some of the things, because I know people that have, that are watching are probably wondering, well, what kind of trauma has she experienced? What has she had to overcome?
Yeah.
So I mean, if you're comfortable sharing, or if, you don't have to share everything or anything if you don't want to, but we're very open in this group. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's get real and raw. Well, I have come, my family going back generations has been abusive in a lot of ways, mentally, emotionally, sexually, physically. In my household growing up, there was a lot of physical violence. There was a lot of emotional outbursts. There was many, many times I did not feel safe as a child, um, and even loved a lot. Uh, And then as I got into my teen years, I started having sex really early. And the kinds of relationships that I was having was not healthy. Um, you know, I was introduced to a lot of concepts that were pretty extreme. And I think I don't really know, when you just when there's things that you feel so good and then you just kind of go with it, you know if you're so desperate for the love and for the affection that you just give in to things that you might not be totally comfortable with, but you don't, you feel like there's no other way to get what you need. So I went through a lot of things like that, um, and yeah, I mean, I once I got pregnant, I knew I wanted to change that. I knew I wanted to parent totally differently. Before I even really wanted kids, I was hanging out with some people who had little bit older kids, like elementary school age kids, and they did this thing called gentle parenting. Well, I didn't know that's what it was, but that's what it was, and it just blew my mind that you could just have conversations with children, and you didn't have to bribe them or punish them, and they just had a conversation with you back. There was no whining. There was no. They didn't seem like there was clashing. It was just very intriguing to me, and I'd never seen anything like that growing up. Growing up, most of the people that I was around was raised very similarly to me. So it was an amazing concept. So when I got pregnant with my first child, I did a ton of research, and I did a lot of healing while I was pregnant, and on that soul level, to address those things in myself and know that I wasn't going to pass that on. And it honestly, that's like one of the hardest things I've ever had to go through, and continuing to, because parenting every day is it's hard. It's really hard, and it's hard if you really want to break those cycles, and if you're really in tune with your emotions and your patterns. It's really, really difficult every day to wake up and continue, and and sometimes you don't, and then you have to go and well, I try to forgive myself and not beat myself up, because that's back into a negative spiral. I don't want to get in a negative spiral. I want to be back into a positive spiral. So I always apologize to my kids, and I apologize to myself, and start each day over again. Um, so I'll talk about the fire a little bit, because that was kind of a traumatic, crazy thing, and it goes hand in hand with my postpartum depression and anxiety experience that I'm pretty sure most of it, like most people who've had kids, can relate to. Um, I had just had my third child. Uh, he was 4 months old, and then I had a 2-year old and a just turned 5-year old. And the 5-year old had been in school for the year, like a preschool, and then he'd just come out. So I was getting adjusted to having 3 kids, and trying to uphold these expectations of myself to keep my house, in a certain way, because I was raised to have a very clean environment, and honestly, I do feel better in a clean environment to a certain extent. I have my own kinds of messes, but there's only so much chaos I can take. um, so I had a lot of expectations of myself to upkeep my house, and I had just gotten to a good place in my apothecary business. And at the same time, within those few weeks, I had my grandmother had fallen ill. Um, she had some heart attacks and some strokes, and she was in a really bad shape. And my grandfather was not really dealing well. He kind of never really expected this to happen. So he was learning how to take care of himself. He wasn't really able to be a caretaker for her. And so she had been in rehab for a while, and I was trying to see her and help take care of her. And so the day the fire happened, I just had it was a very stressful day. And I was trying to get my grandmother a manicure, because she really needed her nails cut. They were very, very long. And so I was trying to coordinate that, and trying to find someone to go up to see her at the rehab center, and trying to deal with my kids, and trying to get some stuff done in my business. And I just got to this point where I was just too stressed, and I was trying to multitask, and I wasn't asking for support, and I didn't really have the support that I felt like I would have needed. But really, I just had too much on my plate. I was just trying to do too many things at the same time. Um, anyway, I'd gone up to try to do some work, and I was burning some sage and left it on fire, because I heard my kids fighting downstairs. So I went downstairs to stop that. And then I was on the phone with my grandfather, and then all of a sudden, tons and tons of smoke. And so I go and I run upstairs, and I see I go and I see the shelf that's on fire. And so I run back downstairs, get the fire extinguisher, and that it didn't really work, because the whole rest of the room was blowing up. Oh, I'm sorry about my light. It's flickering. It's weird. But um, so I was kind of in shock when that was happening. I'm sure everybody recognizes the feeling of shock. And I was like, oh my God. And I was kind of freaking out, like, what is happening, sort of thing. And then out of the corner of my eye, I saw my 2-year-old, who was standing in the room with me, kind of watching smoke billow out of the room. And it kind of snapped me out of it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to get my kids and get out of here. So we did. And luckily, we have an amazing fire response team at Malmstrom Air Force Base. And they took care of the fire. It was contained in the one room. But the room that it was my home office. It was also where I was storing, like, all of my personal items, all my books, all my things from my past, my art, gifts from my friends, like anything that was like me, was in there. And so on one hand, I was like feeling immense guilt for starting a fire and potentially endangering my family. And then also I was grieving, like, the loss of, everything that I felt was important to me. And that was really, really hard. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this. I had so many people telling me not to cry right after the fire. And oh my gosh, that just pissed me off. Like, I know people were well-meaning. I think that people didn't want me to freak out my kids, because, people are very uncomfortable with crying, especially, if there's nothing they can do about it. And I ignored them for the most part, and I just let myself cry, because I knew that if I held it all in, it was just going to turn out worse. So I cried, I let my kids cry, and then over the last, I kind of went into survival mode. And over the next few months, I was finally able to, sit and be with my feelings and just kind of let it all, feel it all. And it's been kind of a journey. I still have emotions about it. I can feel it in my throat, like I can feel like tense when I'm talking about it. But once the year anniversary happened, I just kind of let myself forgive myself. I'm like, okay, you know what? It was a mistake. It was an accident. I am making better steps in my life so that I don't end up that frustrated. I only do work when I know I have child free time, and I take breaks for myself when I need to. I take care of my body, and I get enough sleep, and it helps now that my kids are older and more helpful. But yeah, that was, I don't know, fairly traumatic, I feel. Yeah.
And I think, guilt and shame are probably the two strongest words that we can use that keep us trapped. It keeps us trapped in those emotions, those things that we can't let go of. And, we're embarrassed, like, oh, I set my house on fire, and realistically, it can happen to anybody, it's not like
Yeah.
it's not that weird that happens. And it's so quick, and there's so many things that happen in life that it's a split second, a few seconds where you're away, whatever, that changes your life. And, you can sit there and hold on to it. But, I think anyone watching could really empathize with that feeling of shame and guilt. Like, oh, I stayed in the relationship too long. Oh, I made a mistake. Oh, I did something wrong. I'm embarrassed of my behavior, whatever it is. We're human. And as humans, we get to do stupid things sometimes, and like make mistakes, and that's okay.
It's
That's
kind of a prerequisite.
right.
Yeah.
You can look back, okay, well, that was a human thing to do, and that's part of what it is. So, any of us, if anyone's judging somebody else for making a mistake, that's the first problem, because again, every single person has made mistakes, and hopefully, and you'd said this before, we're learning from them. So,
Mhm.
we don't stay when you're not in growth mode and you're staying stuck and you're repeating the same patterns over and over again. That's not good. But the good thing is actually to make a mistake, learn from it, and then be able to grow and move on from it. So I think the fact that you were able to process it, allow the feelings not to build up. And don't you hate it when people say that, like, suck it up, or don't cry, or don't feel
Yeah.
feelings?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's not very surprising because I feel like that's just the prevailing culture.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was angry, and then I also just ignored them for a little bit. And then what made me mad with myself though is that after about an hour or so, I did. I just, I was trying to make myself keep it together because people were expecting that. So, I think we all still working on it. We're all still working on our stuff. So.
Yeah. And
Yeah, I
those
think,
limiting
yeah.
those the belief systems, like, I'm an adult, I need to keep it all together for my children, and I need to do this and I need to do that, and all of these feelings that kind of well up is what's supposed to be. And so I understand, I completely understand that.
Yeah.
So what are some things that you'd like to leave, or
Okay,
empower
yeah.
some of our with some real
Well,
tools, some real things?
absolutely. Okay, so for me, I want to talk about that expectations thing. So I had a really hard time. One of the things that led up to the fire was my expectations of my house. And it was just a program in me that I couldn't allow myself to do any extras like my business or any self-care or anything artistic, anything until the house was taken care of. And I feel like a lot of us probably have that kind of a programming. And I just slowly got away from it. It helped a lot that I was staying with a friend and just being so much away from my own routine and being immersed in her routine. And she has 5 kids, so it was very, very different. It really allowed me to like just evaluate, like, oh, you know what? If I don't do the dishes by the end of the night, no, it's not really going to be that bad. I can just do them tomorrow sometime. Like, it's so funny because I thought I would feel like seeing a big pile of dishes in the sink in the morning would make me feel bad. But honestly, it doesn't. Like, I'm just like, okay, you know what? I'll get to it when I have time. When I have the time for that task, I will do it, or the energy for it, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So learning how to go within myself and then feel what it is that I need to do and is it aligned with what my energy is. Like, so I like one of my big goals is to take my kids out to the park at least once or twice a week, and or more. But so I have days that I set for that. But then if I feel like, okay, you know what, we're not going to go to the park today, we're going to do this thing or whatever. Or if I had plans for something else and I'm like, no, you know what, this feels like a park day. I'm going to go and I'm going to do that. And I just follow that because I realize that, life is too short to be worrying about what I am supposed to be doing or, what should be done over what I really want to do and what I really truly am fed by doing. So, so there's that. And that might take some practice for you that, for anybody, that might just be a small change in routine or trying to let go of some of it and asking for help. Um, and, that's where that supportive partner thing comes in. Like my husband is amazing at being like, if I ask him to do something, he will eventually get around to it. It might take him longer than I would do it, but like he knows that like when I'm asking for help, it's because I really need it, and he'll step in and do that. Um, so having any sort of help, whether it's family around that can help you or friends or whatever, just be okay or try to be okay, practice being okay at asking and accepting help. I think that's really big. Yeah.
I love that. I love it because I think that, and as a female, I think so often we feel like we have to do it all, so that
Yeah.
we're weak when we ask for help. And that is such a horrible place to be because it's actually strength to say, hey, I know I'm not so good at this and I need help with this, or I can't handle this right now. It's okay to ask for assistance because we literally cannot do it all. We need, assistance and support from other people. And Carla, agrees with you. She said that she needs to do the housework first before she can do anything else. And I've been there before too. And I'm also to the point in my life as well where I'll say, as much as I want everything to be clean and whatever, and especially right now I'm pregnant, I'm like, I really need a nap. So the floor is going to be, I just can't, I'm going to just deal with it being dirty, or, things like that, where it might be irritating, but there's things that are more important, spending, like you said, spending time. You have 3 boys, like they need their energy taken out. They need to go around. I have a 2-year-old. He needs to get out of the house so I can stay home and clean today, or I can have a fun memory and bring him to the park and enjoy watching him run around and have a good time and get his energy out. So,
Exactly.
what's really,
Exactly.
when you're on your deathbed, is it important that you have a clean house, or is it important that you have good memories and you feel good, throughout your life?
Exactly. So, and with that, it takes a mindset shift. And I think for people like Carla, if you are wanting to try it, just try one day. Just tell yourself, just this one day, you know what? I am not going to do any of the things that I expect myself to do. I'm only going to do what I want to do. And even if what you want to do are some of those expectations, because my dishes in my kitchen are a priority for me because I have to cook like almost all of my own food. So I set that up for myself. But if I don't want to clean whatever area of the house, or if I don't want to do one specific chore or whatever, just try one day, and you might find that it's you can allow yourself to do those things. It takes practice. It takes practice. The other thing I want to say is that one of the things I know about myself when I have like a chore in my head, and where my mindset is at about it, if I'm resistant to it at all, it seems like it takes so much more effort to do it. Rather, if I switch my mindset, and for me, turning on music always helps. I'm a huge music person, so if I have something I don't want to do, I just turn on music and I start grooving and dancing, and then I just do whatever it is. And it always takes way less time and energy than I feel like it should have. And it, again, takes practice. So.
Yeah, and I'm right on you with music. Music is, everything can change with the right song, with the right band, your favorite song, whatever. It just changes everything. So yeah, having that, I think, helps. And I agree. I think that when we set ourselves up for it to be unfun, when we're like, oh, I have to do the dishes, like, oh, I have to, we feel like, oh, it's so bad. And then when you actually do it, like today, I made dinner and I immediately just wash the dish. And normally I just put it in the sink and I'll do it later. But I've been trying for the past few days, cooking and immediately washing it. I'm like, wow, that really it took literally 2 minutes. And I didn't have to look at the dirty dish in the sink, and it just was over
And
done.
dread it. Yeah. That's excellent.
Yep. It's funny. It's those little tweaks, and that's one of the things that for any of us, there are little tweaks. There are little things that we can do to change it, where we don't have to, make a huge change right away. It's those little changes over time that really add up and really make the big changes over time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if for anyone who's experienced any sort of abuse or trauma, it is like extra hard for you to be able to make those changes. For as opposed to people who have not experienced that much trauma or abuse. Because it's in rewiring your brain. So one of the things I want to talk about are some tools that help with that. How familiar are you with EFT? Do you know about EFT?
I do a little bit, but I love more information.
Yeah, well, so EFT is emotional freedom technique, also called tapping. I forgot the name of the guy that invented it, but he studied the brain and Chinese meridians, and he discovered that if you, he has this process in which you tap in different places, mostly on your face, but on your chest and in your hands as well. And he goes through this process of, and I'll do the first part of it. So say I want to work on releasing the pattern of guilt I have around doing the dishes, or whatever emotion you want to put there. So you would tap yourself and you go say, even though I hate doing the dishes, I still completely and deeply love and accept myself. And so when I start doing this with people, often it's really, really hard for them to even say that first sentence, to even say out loud that they love and accept themselves. And that's really telling. So if you're in that place, just don't worry about it, keep going. You keep going through the process, and usually by the end of the process you are able to say it and feel it, and then you're also, the way that you feel about whatever you were tapping on goes to a lower number. Usually there's a scale, like if you feel that emotion on a 7 and then you tap on it once and you feel it on a 4, and then you want to tap it on it again, it goes down to a 1. So there's a lot of websites out there. There's a lot of books out there, a lot of practitioners that teach EFT. So I highly recommend looking into that. The other thing, of course, I want to talk about is Reiki. Reiki is just amazing. I don't, so I know, but for people who don't know, Reiki is translated as universal light healing energy. I like to explain to people that Reiki is like a natural part of the universe that was there when it was created, and it just wants us to be whole. It wants us to come back into our divine light that we naturally are. And it really helps a lot in any sort of situation. I highly recommend, if you feel drawn to that sort of a thing, to seek out somebody who does there's a lot of different forms of energy work. Reiki is only one of them. Those sorts of things have helped me a lot, immensely. And also supporting the body nutritionally, and eating just whole natural foods and taking care of yourself and your body, I think, is a big portion of being able to love yourself again. Because I know often when you're in a negative spiral and you're in a bad mental place, you don't want to take care of yourself. So prioritizing that and finding out exactly how you need to take care of yourself, because everybody's going to have different nutritional needs. Don't just follow a fad, or, if you feel like it, you do. But definitely you want to be nourishing yourself and drinking good, clean water and just doing the best you can with whatever resources you have. Just know that you are worthy of the best things in life.
Agreed. And Carla asked, which is a great question, and I was actually thinking of it as you were saying it. So Carla, you read my mind. Can you do it remotely? So with Reiki, it's really cool because you don't have to be there in person. Some people are uncomfortable getting Reiki done. When you say remotely, it means you're not in the same place. Like Salome, you could be in Montana and I can be in New York. It doesn't really matter where we're located. Hold on, I'm plugging in. My phone is dying. It doesn't matter where you're located because it kind of like bends space-time continuum. So you're able to tap into the energy, and so whoever you feel drawn to be the person who gives you Reiki. I mean, whoever you're comfortable with. If you're doing it at home, and you can jump in if you have something to add to it, but if you're doing it, like, let's say you go somewhere to get Reiki done to you, they can do hands where they're touching. Sometimes the hands are above. It really kind of doesn't matter. When my husband does remote Reiki, he picks like in his mind what a person who like where you are, and then does Reiki over you. Is I forgot what it's called, but it's, you know, where the person, like, he'll use his leg, or he'll use a doll or something, and he'll put it in that.
Yes.
So
Yes.
so I mean, it's great. I can say for myself, I mean, the emotional part, I've definitely felt that one too, and the energy will go wherever you need it. But you know, a great story that I have before I really, not that I was not a believer, but sometimes you're like, that's a little weird for me. Like some people, and
it's a weird thing. People kind of have to have an experience with it to believe it. Yeah.
I remember I went to my first Reiki healing circle, and I remember they kind of gave me some like little things to do. And when I was done, when I was giving Reiki to another person, I was picturing just sending white light into this person's heart. And I don't know why I was drawn to that. And the woman turned around at, you know, at the end of the circle, and she was like, "Who are you?" And I was like, sorry. Like,
no, that's good.
And she said, she's like, "I felt this warm, bright light in my heart." She's like, "And I've been, you know," she was dealing with a difficult relationship and all these different things. And I was like, wow, that's kind of weird. And then my husband, I was like, the fact that I even knew to do that, like, I just was drawn to that place. And when you do Reiki, you're kind of drawn to certain things. It's the energy where you're drawn to it. And I was in California, and I was having a really bad issue with my shoulder. I have bursitis in my shoulder. And I had been to the doctors, and they were like, surgery. There's nothing we can, you know, you can do. You're just going to have to get surgery. And I was like, it comes and goes. It flares up, but I'm not really that worried about it. So I was in California at a meeting, and these were like 12-hour meetings. And I was just having a real bad issue. So I said, it wasn't my husband at the time, but I said, "Hey, can you send me some Reiki?" He's like, "Yeah, of course." And he's like, "Are you going to be able to lay down?" And I said, "No, I'm in meetings all day long. There's nothing I can do. I have to just sit here in the meeting." And I remember sitting there, and all of a sudden I was like, my shoulder hurt. I was like moving it around. I'm like, whoa, it doesn't hurt. And I mean, it's only been, you know, I have a 2.5-year-old. So for the first like year, I was carrying him around in a sack. You'd think that bursitis would be something that would make it inflamed. And it's like every once in a blue moon, there'll be a little bit of discomfort, but get some Reiki, and then bam, I was fine. So, and realistically, I have no pain in my shoulder at all after they said surgery. So Reiki, definitely try it. And I'm sure you have lots of great stories of how Reiki has helped people.
Well, I actually, lots of similar stories. But yeah, I want to touch more on the following your vibe thing, because there's everybody has their own, I like to say, flavor when they do Reiki. So every practitioner is going to have their own expertise at it. They're going to have their own, you know, insights. So yeah, what you were saying earlier is follow who you're vibing with. I feel like that's important. And then like the distant thing. So when I send distance Reiki, I do like an energy ball, and then send it. And sometimes I'll get impressions, and sometimes I won't. It just kind of depends on you know how much what's going on, you know. So yeah, and it's just amazing because I've worked on so many people who are not, they're like, okay, yeah, you know, I'm willing to try it, or they're kind of into different spiritual things, so they know a little bit, but they've never really experienced Reiki, and then they're really shocked. I remember one friend I gave Reiki to, and I was only standing on one side of her, and the whole time I was giving Reiki to her, she felt hands on the other side of her body. And I feel like that was the Reiki guides and the angels that I was working with, assisting. You know, that happens a lot too. But yeah, I mean, it really is a wonderful thing, and it's just so funny because you know, there's science behind it, and there's, you know, logic behind it, if you want to go into that. But also, I don't think any of that is important if you're feeling it. If you're feeling, if you're feeling drawn to it, you know, I say just look into it, give it a go. Yeah.
Yep, I like what works. I like things.
Yeah.
I'm open to things, and sometimes I'm like, I don't know. I'll see it, and if it works, then I'm all for it. You know, as soon as I see results, then that's what I want to go for. And I think that, you know, for a lot of people, they see some amazing results from Reiki. So I agree. All right, Carlos' question: does other people's energy affect you when you're doing Reiki? That's a good question. You want to take that one?
Yeah, so it can if you are not well practiced. I know often when because I was giving Reiki before I was attuned. So often I would feel really, really drained, and sometimes I would pick up on, I would like, I say take home some of their like physical or emotional complaints. And I would be really, really drained for like 2 or 3 days afterwards. Um, just because I wasn't doing any sort of shielding, I wasn't channeling the energy correctly. I think I was probably using a lot more of my own energy than channeling energy from the universe. But after I got attuned and after I was practicing for a while, I learned how to, so before I do Reiki, what I do is I do self Reiki. So I'll channel Reiki and give it to myself. And then I'll also use a technique called the violet flame, which is this energetic transmuter. And so I just invoke the violet flame in the space that I'm in, and that it will, and I intend for it to help to protect me, and so to keep anything that's not supposed to be from me away from me. And there's also, once you reach the master level, there's a sign. It's called Raku, and it's kind of like a lightning bolt, and it separates your energy from another person's energy. And this is most traditionally used in attunements. But sometimes I'll have somebody ask for Reiki, and they might have a lot of issues going on. So, which I don't necessarily want to have in my space, but as a Reiki master, I feel like it's my duty to give Reiki when it's requested. So I'll draw that symbol to keep their energy completely separate from mine, so that I don't take any attachments and I don't get their, any energies or anything like that way. I also use crystals a lot. So one I'm really fond of is selenite. You can kind of see this is my selenite wand. Selenite is a really useful stone. It just I don't know, it just clears energy away instantly. Kind of acts as like a, I don't really know how to explain it. I was going to say lightning rod, but opposite, but that doesn't, I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah, so I use crystals to help me a lot with that. And like I said, the violet flame technique, which there's, if you Google it, I'm sure there's a lot of information online about violet flame. You don't have to be attuned to Reiki or any other sort of energy to use that spiritual tool. That's just available to anybody. You just have to have the intention that you invoke it, and it's used. Yeah.
Excellent. And it's funny because before I got on for the interview, I didn't want to forget to put on my Maldivite. I'm like, I'm speaking to a Reiki master. I'm going to need to cool. Like,
oh, that's awesome. I have Moldavite earring. I wear a Moldavite earring most days. So yes.
Little nerd out there. When I was getting my attunement, like my second level, I was drawn. I just felt this energy towards this stone, and it's an otherworldly magical stone. So I was like, cool. I'm buying. Not cheap, but it's been actually really cool. It's really opened up a lot of. I've had some interesting dreams and some interesting things happen since I got the Maldivite. So I think it's actually really cool. Oh. And definitely do some research in different, again, one of those things of like, I was another one that was like, oh, crystals, okay, and I was open to it. But there are definitely things that, there's definitely some things that are to be said because it actually works. Tom has a good question. How much should someone expect to pay for good results from a good practitioner? It's a good question.
Oh, that is a good question. I feel like that varies per area. I'm in Montana, so things are probably way cheaper than in New York. But sessions around here usually go between $45 to $60. Yep. When I was in Oregon, I can remember that they're somewhere between $60 and $80. I know that often a lot of practitioners will do discounted events. Like I'll do Reiki by donation every few months. And things like, do Reiki. I do a Reiki class and a Reiki circle, in which you can experience that, and I charge $15 for those, just for people who are really, really interested in it, because I feel okay. So I do attunements for free because the woman who was my teacher who attuned me, that was her tradition and her lineage. So I want to honor that, and I also, because I believe in it, because like we were saying earlier, this is the time. I think that I feel like anybody who is drawn to Reiki, you should get an experience in it. But if you really feel like that's what you want to be doing, go search for an attunement. And I'm hoping that there's more people out there who aren't charging a ton of money, because often to get your first and second attunements are usually around $200 to $500 a piece. And then often I've seen master attunements go up to $1,000. And I just feel like that does not align with my truth. I'm not going to tell other people what to do. And I know people need to make a living, and I honor that and respect that. But I do all of my attunements for free or by donation. I say by donation. But I do charge a nominal fee for my class so that I can get people to come and actually learn and have a discussion for that. So just search around in your area. I feel like, again, the resonance is going to be an important aspect. If you're connecting with somebody, then that's good. If there's a Reiki practitioner that you don't connect with for whatever reason, just keep looking. Don't force yourself into an energetic situation where you're not going to feel safe, because I feel like that's the most important thing. You need to have a good rapport, you need to have trust, and you need to be able to feel safe and comfortable.
Yeah, for sure. And before I forget, Tom is on. And Salome, this is someone that I'm actually, when we get off, I'm going to tell you to talk to Tom later, because you talked about your issues with rheumatoid or with arthritis. So just keep that in mind, that Tom is on there. So I'm going to send you back to him later on. For I don't want to get into it now, but you're going to have to talk to him later.
Okay, good.
Tom asked before, what problem does it solve? So the really cool thing about Reiki is that wherever it's really needed in your body is where it's going to go. So if you're having, like, we're specifically talking about trauma, so it's definitely helpful for trauma. For me, it was my shoulder. Depending on where your issues are, it's going to kind of naturally go to those areas. So like, as the practitioner, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as the practitioner, I don't get to say, like, hey, I'm going to just, work on this part. It's kind of like wherever the universe is coming through you, and the universe decides what needs to be worked on. It's your high good sides. It's not necessarily, you can say to the practitioner, hey, I'm having a lot of emotional issues, or I have some pain in my knee or whatever, and we can do that. But I mean, we found when we practice, people will leave like they had a back issue, but they leave like with like tears in their eyes, because it's released this emotion that they didn't know they had. And realistically, back issues and emotional issues kind of go hand in hand.
Absolutely. Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say, is that I always have people set an intention, and they don't always have to tell me exactly what it is, but before I have a session with people, I have them set an intention, and I'll channel the healing. But often what happens in a Reiki session is the energy is going to, the way that I do Reiki is that the energy is going to your emotional and spiritual bodies that help to bring alignment back into the place in which you are imbalanced. So, if you're having an issue like with your knee, and the reason spiritually or emotionally that you're having an issue with your knee is because of something that happened, say, in your childhood, right? Like a specific event that changed your thought pattern or that impacted you in a way that caused you harm, then what Reiki is going to do is it's going to send energy to that event in the past. It's going to send energy to your spirit and your emotions. And hopefully you will have a release of the emotion, and that will help to bring your physical body back into alignment. Yeah.
That's really cool. Getting close to the end, are there questions that anybody has who's watching that you definitely want to ask before we end? Remember, anyone who's watching this on a recording, we're going to be coming back and reading your comments, so don't feel like you're watching a recorded version and you're not going to get your questions answered. Just type those questions in, and we will go back and respond to anything that comes up for you. So, if there's anything now, please let us know. If not, is there anything, Salome, that you would like to share with us, your final tips before you go, and as people start, trying to decide if there's any other questions they have?
No, I mean, I think that doing the emotional processing, I think, is the most important message I wanted to pass on to people. That I've heard the saying before that your life lessons are kind of like a spiral. You think that you've dealt with it, but then something happens to you, you get triggered, and then you figure out that you're not really over that yet. And I think it's important not to beat yourself up if that happens to you, and that you recognize that, this is something that you're probably going to have to deal with in some way for the rest of your life. So recognize that just because you might be stuck in a mindset or have issues with whatever, that doesn't mean you're not healing and that you're not growing. It just means that you need to set some time aside in your life to address that as you're feeling it, because otherwise you're just going to keep carrying it.
Yeah. Yeah, take it, go with the flow, like they say. You know, be in the flow,
Yeah.
feel the emotions, let it go through you, and be able to move forward from it and grow. So Thomas said, what would be a test for someone who has never had Reiki to be able to do with a healer they would potentially hire? Okay, so what would be a good test so to know this is a legit healer and not someone who's just doing hocus pocus?
Well, if you're just out and about and kind of meeting them, I would, one, follow your intuition, follow your gut. What does your intuition say about this person? Do you have red flags that come up? And then also you need to, because most of us, everybody who's watching, we've kind of been through traumas and stuff, you need to kind of have some insight into, are you seeing a red flag because of your past traumas, or is it really there? And kind of address that within yourself, and that might be totally valid. It absolutely, and I think that that's important to honor. The second thing is like, if you're looking for somebody who is legit, I don't, anytime anybody wants to talk to me about Reiki, I'm 100% open to talk with them about it, unless I, have my kids around or something. And I'm always willing to give people, like, I call it like a little, like a mini session. Like, sometimes I'm somewhere and I'm talking to people, so I'll be like, well, I could give you a little Reiki now if you want. And then I'll just like channel a little bit from my hand to their hand and see how they respond to that. And often they're like, whoa. So, you just kind of have to feel that out. Maybe people aren't quite that comfortable. I can schedule 10-minute, 20-minute sessions with people if they're curious, things like that. But if you find somebody who's not that flexible, I say just research them online and see what their clients have to say about them and see what feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I think and Thomas said people who are in bad relationships always think takers are legit or fakers are legit, and so and I agree with that. I think sometimes we're very open because we're looking for help, so it is a really good idea to make sure that you're go with, there is that gut feeling, there is that feeling. Of course, if you really talk to someone, I've talked to people that said that they became certified based on, yeah, exactly, bad relations, bad intuition, which, hello, I completely understand that one. But when I hear people say that they got attuned online, I mean, maybe, but to me that is not legit. I need someone, like when how long did it take for you to move up in your levels? I mean, like for my husband, for example, he was for 7 years practicing Reiki regularly before he actually was attuned to a Reiki Master Teacher. So if someone says like, oh, I spent a weekend and here I am now a Reiki Master Teacher, that to me is not very legit. So you kind of want to, like, when you hear people talk about lineage, when you hear people talk about how their training was, how long they've been practicing for, those are all things that are kind of important to ask and find out. Who was your teacher? Where did they learn? How long have you been practicing? Things like that, I think are really important questions.
Yeah.
You're right. People, you might
That's
not.
a really good point.
Yeah. You might just give it to like, oh, but help me. Just someone help me. But you don't feel to ask those questions. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So I wanted to touch on a few different things. So one, I do completely agree with I think that the weekend trainings, as I like to call them, don't give you enough guidance to properly practice Reiki. Mm-hmm. And I would not just, those kinds of people, I would want to, that's the kind of people I'm trying to reach out to now with my Reiki is for Everyone kind of classes, so that we can gather and teach each other and learn from each other in that way. But I have experienced online, after I was attuned to my master level, I have experienced online attunements through different like flavors of Reiki. And I do feel like those can be legit. And I do know some teachers who teach online who are really good, legitimate teachers. So I think it just depends on their training and resonance with that. The other thing I wanted to say is that Reiki has this thing, it's like a built-in safeguard. So even if you end up going with like a Reiki practitioner who isn't as practiced or as learned as they could be in it, Reiki is not going to cause you any harm. The practitioner might be drained, like I was. The practitioner might, pick up on some things, but that's their own lessons and the way that they need to deal with it. But in terms of a patient, you're not going to, hopefully, you would not get any sort of ill energy. You wouldn't be getting any of their, mm, do you know what I'm trying to say? Maybe you can help me phrase it. Um, Reiki isn't going to harm. Like, if there's any excess energy, it's going to go back into the universe. At the very least, you get like a few moments of laying down and being relaxed.
So Brooke said, are there any special certifications? I was actually, when I was reading that, I was looking to see, um, we have certifications that we have hanging up in our space just to say that we're certified, in what in the Reiki. So that's something you could look for. Like I said before, you can ask about lineage, which is who did they learn from? There's the person who originated Reiki, which was, what was his name?
Well, Usui is the main form of Reiki is Usui Reiki. And I'm gonna butcher his first name, so I'm not even gonna try
Yeah.
to say it. But he was a Japanese man in the 1800s he rediscovered Reiki and came up with the system of syllables and the way to teach everybody. So he's like the original Reiki master. So there's a few other forms that are really popular. Karuna Reiki is another really popular one. Um, there's the Tibetan Reiki. There's a few other. There's lots of different kinds of Reiki. But if somebody, those two main ones are Sui and Karuna. If somebody says that that's what they're attuned for, then that's pretty legit. Those are legit lineages. There's also a new one called Holy Fire. Have you heard of Holy Fire? Okay, it's a pretty new one, but I have some friends who are attuned to that, and that's another one that I feel is really legit. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can always and ask for someone. So if there's someone that you feel, a trusted person, a great thing to do is, hey, if you have a friend of yours that's been having great Reiki sessions and you decide to meet this person and you get a great vibe from them, then that might be a good way to go. I mean, it really, people learn from someone talks about it and they say, hey, I had a great session with so and so, and so I really recommend them. I mean, that's always a great way of following good practitioners and people that are legit. Because again, it's not that it's going to harm you, but I know that you also don't want to waste your money, which is obviously another concern for people. And if someone is practicing it correctly, you're going to have, and it might not be right away. Sometimes it's like the next day, right, where you're like, wow, I slept really well last night, or wow, I had a weird thought that I had never had before. And so you might not walk away noticing it, but you should notice. There should be something that you should notice. And if you're noticing that there's no change at all, you might want to maybe you're just not vibing correctly with that person and try a different practitioner. And again, online, you can, try a whole bunch of different people. So you don't even have to be, if you're in an area where there's not a lot of Reiki practitioners that you're aware of, then go online and find someone that you feel comfortable with, who's got a good record. Maybe someone that has some good information, that is willing to talk to you. I know for us, we make sure we talk to everybody and make sure they feel comfortable. So allow the person to give you information and don't just accept it. Don't feel bad to ask a lot of questions and see how you feel coming from there. So we're I know we definitely went over, but there's a lot of great questions. So thank you everybody for coming on and saying hello. I wanted to kind of keep it in my integrity. I normally try to keep it to an hour, so I'm going to end it. So Salome, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. We got a lot of really great information. Thank you for sharing some of your story and how you got to where you are. So I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to get a lot of healing from the information that you shared. Again, and this is, and I love that you were coming on because you're a woman of my own heart. Between
Aww.
nutrition and exercise and Reiki and living in Montana, and all these like cool things. It's that combination together that's really helpful in your healing from whatever it is that you're healing. So thank you so much for coming on. I
Well,
really
thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you for seeing me in this way. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and this was your first time doing so. I'm
This is
glad
my
we were
first
the ones.
interview.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
So
was really great.
so good job.
Yay, thank you.
For those of you who were watching, I just want to just reiterate again. There's a lot of I just shared a webinar series for people that are looking to heal from toxic relationships. So if you haven't seen it yet, email me, message me, and I can always send that to you. I'd really love for you to be able to get that information. And some of the stuff that we actually talked about tonight is in there. It would be really helpful for you. I also just want to remind people that I do have a few spots left for the speaking event that I'm going to be at in South Carolina, in Charleston at the end of August. So women's empowerment events. So again, we were just talking about having a tribe. So having those people that you can connect with. It's that August 24th to 26th. We actually have a reduced price. So that's actually really cool. Food included, board included, lots of fun activities. So a really great opportunity to connect with other women and connect with your tribe. So lots of really, really good stuff. I know, Sally, we're going to be putting your information in the comments. So make sure you share how everyone can get in touch with you, because there might be questions they wanted to ask you specifically. So we'll be leaving all that in the comments. And so, please reach out to her. That's what she's here for, was to be able to share her knowledge with you guys. So definitely get in touch with us. And so thank you again, Salome, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you again.
Yes, thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too. And bye, everybody. Thanks for coming by.